Welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast. I am Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler, buddy. What's up? Wednesday night.
Hump day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wednesday night, man. You've made it to the middle of the week. I haven't been working this week on a paternity leave as my wonderful wife heads back to work for this school year. But let me just say, taking care of a 5-month-old is just as work, if not more work than my usual job. So I'll say that, man.
I hear you, buddy.
And buddy, we have an absolute treat tonight, man. Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews joins us.
All right. Bring Brett on now. Brett, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, Brian and Curtis. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's the best time of year right now. Everyone's undefeated. Optimism is running high, and I'm excited to break down the 2021 season for you.
Yeah, we're probably more optimistic right now than we'll be at any point of the season, especially kind of how last season shook out for us, and some of the attrition we've had here or there. So, we're feeling as good as we will probably feel, but let's see how this goes, man. Before we go into anything with the previews, though, wanted to talk a little bit about Pick Six Previews and what this is all about and kind of how you got into this. So the big question I have is I know that, there's been long established publications like Athlon, Lindy's, Field Steel. You got into this game in 2012. What was it like kind of getting into that space as kind of the underdog and now, having your publication being the most accurate in terms of the Power 5 level?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, back in 2012, I launched Pick Six Previews with my former co-founder, Mike Nawaziat, and our claim to fame right away was that we won the accuracy title in 2012. Our Power 5 predictions were graded the most accurate in the country that year, according to Stasson.com, who's graded all these publications for decades. So it was a one-year wonder, but then we backed it up again in 13 and again in 14, and here we are now. It's my 10th straight year doing it. The first 9 have been graded number 1 over that time frame. So, and this is a one-man operation now. So it's just me going up against the big companies, the legacy brands like Athlon and Sports Illustrated and Lindy's and Phil Steele. So to be able to go toe-to-toe with them and beat them all in accuracy is that's been the claim to fame. But, of course, it really grew through Twitter. That's kind of the perfect medium for me to get across my graphics, my information, my stats, and my opinions. And it really has grown organically. So it's been a great movement over on Twitter for years now. So, and then, and lastly, I took it one step further, put together a full book, an instant download, a PDF about 200 pages long. In 2019 was the first time I put that together and sold it. And that book kind of made the rounds around the media circles, and I was invited to become a Heisman voter in 2019. So the ultimate honor there, and it's an honor. So here we are now, the 10th year, and I'll say that it's definitely the hardest of all 10, having to go through the inconsistencies of 2020. Some teams played 4 games, some played 12. You had opt-outs, you had transfers, you had quarantines. As you guys know, Virginia Tech, just a lot of quarantine time where certain rosters are hit worse than others at certain times. And then, of course, 2021 brings this transfer portal boom where the rosters are all shook up like never before. So this was the hardest one ever. But and real quick, though, what makes mine a little bit different than the ones you see on newsstands is, I think, balance. I really try and strike a balance between my numbers. I have all my analytics and graphics on the left side of the page, but really putting it back into readable terms that football fans want to read about. Because it's boring to read about, Nebraska was 0.125 in X metric. Okay, what's that even mean? So I call head coaches and coordinators and beat writers and try and get the storylines and the coaching schemes and the program histories all in there. So I really go for the balance aspect of it.
Yeah, we picked it up, obviously when we invited you to come on, we picked it up, started reading through it. I'm not even 20 pages into it yet. It is that much information, is that much detail. So, Brian, you can attest this with me because we were both looking through it yesterday as we were getting ready for tonight. It is so much information. It is, Brett, you do an unbelievable job, man. Kudos to you. For the guys out there listening tonight, and folks who are listening in the morning on the podcast, literally, it will be the best $20. That is the right price, right?
18.
18.
Oh, look, I'm
little discount.
special. Out of the corner discount, $18. And for all you guys who are not only just Virginia Tech fans, but so many of the college football fans out there, Brett, it's not usually just one game a week. I'm usually sitting in here from noon to 2 in the morning. We're recording late nights. We're watching Pac-12s. It's unbelievable, man. And, kudos to you putting together, and now even more kudos with how accurate you are.
Yeah, well, thanks. That's music to my ears, because that was really the goal of the book. Picture yourself back in the 2010, 2012 area when I launched this thing. I was getting tired of just hearing about the same handful of teams. When you turn on the TV or pick up a Sports Illustrated, it was the same handful of programs. It was surface level. It was not in depth. It wasn't actual X's and O's. It was drama. So what I wanted to do was dig into all 66 of these programs, go super deep. I mean, talking every position group, X's and O's, coaching schemes. And what makes mine a little different too is I bring in all that history. I have, not just 5 and 10 year trends, but 50-year trends, 100-year trends, everything. The goal is that when you read about a team, you're learning something, even if it's your own or an opponent. I want you to learn about that team. So I could talk an hour about Kansas. I don't want to bore you, but that's kind of the point, is that, you get enough Alabama, you get enough Clemson, but there's so much unique tradition and storylines within college football that I wanted to dig into all of it. So that's great to hear. That's great feedback, and thank you for purchasing.
Yeah, and the big thing, like when you look at the analytics side of it, I mean, you get that, but I like the way that it's color coded. It's easy to read. It kind of takes some of that, like the boring aspects of pouring through data, and kind of puts it in a very readable format. And then you got the other part where it is a very readable breakdown of everything. And I like how you go into the history there as well. And really it feels like an individual touch with every team, not just, here's this team, we know all about it. Yeah, it's Virginia Tech. They've got Sandman. All right, let's move on to the numbers from last year. No, it's a lot of fun stuff to dive in there, and I think you really kind of get what makes each program kind of unique.
Yeah, thanks. So I mean, once the season ends in January, I kind of go back and relive the season. It sounds crazy, but I'll go back and listen to team podcasts and conference podcasts. I read every AP game story, the game recaps, just to try and get in the shoes of each fan base and each program and see really what happened. Because, and this is really rings true in 2020 with all the extra context that was involved. You can't just look at a team's record anymore. There's so much more that goes into it, the week to week of it with the quarantines, but more so just within each game, just the flukiness, or you might have one team outgaining by 200 yards and turning the ball over 5 times. It's so fluky. So you really have to dig in if you really want to, get the most accurate picks. So that was the goal. That's what I do. It's my process. It's a long process, but yeah, and I'm excited to break down the ACC for you guys.
We appreciate it, and since I brought up Sandman, we got our buddy Tally that is a certified Sandman hater.
Hater.
That might be too strong. He would prefer to move on from Sandman. He's not necessarily a hater. So,
but it's not.
Shout out to Tally.
It's not having Tally. All right. So guys, what we're going to do tonight with Brett is we are looking at all of Virginia Tech's ACC opponents and Notre Dame, because why not? It's Notre Dame. But before we get into that, we are going to do a quick word from our sponsors. All right, so we're going to go in order of the way Virginia Tech plays these teams. So let's start out of the gate, UNC. And Brett, you have got UNC heading to the college football playoff. Now, are you seeing this as mostly a strength of Sam Howell? They do return their full offensive line. Any other components we're missing? Improved defense. Why are you putting them so high to take a leap after losing really their 4 most I wouldn't say explosive, but their 4 most impressive players on offense, less Sam Howell last year?
Yeah, so this one's really getting a lot of attention, and I guess rightfully so. It's a team that's outside the top 10 in the coaches poll. I believe they were either 10th or 11th, but yeah, this is definitely a roulette ship prediction here. But I have UNC winning the Coastal, winning the conference, and making the college football playoff as an outsider, not one of these typical dynasty programs. There's a lot that goes into this. I mean, first I'll start with recruiting. You always start there. That's a good first starting point. And Mac Brown, he's landed a couple top 15 classes now. It's these 5-star guys, some defensive players that are now moving up the depth chart quickly. So it starts there. Secondly, his coordinator hires were very impressive. Jay Bateman on defense, he plays that hybrid style where you have guys blending positions and cross-training. And it's just great athletes all over the place. But really, it's the offense. I had a chance to interview Phil Longo now for 2 straight preseasons, and this guy's an offensive genius. The way he pairs his air raid passing concepts on the outsides with a physical downhill run game in the middle. So it's not your typical air raid on surface level. It's great balance. You saw it last year when they put up, the 2 running backs put up 550 yards against Miami rushing. So they do have a couple question marks at the skill positions. But as I dug in a little bit, I started to feel better about it because, you lose your top 2 receivers and your top 2 backs. And normally that'd be enough to cripple an offense. But they do get back Bo Corrales, who was a 2019 starter. It's a big 6'5" frame, great in the red zone. And then they had Downs, this breakout player in the bowl game. He shined in the Orange Bowl against A&M. So there's your starter there. And then Joffrey Brown. He apparently beats Diami Brown in foot races in practice back when they were both playing here. So they while they lose Diami, they still have Joffrey there. So a lot to like there at the receiver core, albeit a little bit inexperienced. And then at running back, I know that's going to be a bigger duo to replace, but they did help the situation by bringing in Ty Chandler, who was 5th all-time in rushing at Tennessee. I mean, this is a guy played 40 games in the SEC. I think he's going to be okay and bring some veteran, ability there. So those were the question marks. From there, it's strengths. I mean, the offensive line, all 5 starters are back. They're NFL sized and getting good draft grades. Sam Howell, everybody knows him by now. He's stacked 2 straight top 10 passing seasons, and he's a Heisman front runner this year. So it's everything for me. It's recruiting, it's scheme, it's returning experience, and then lastly, the defense. That's kind of the biggest question mark on the team and the program. If you look at it only 2020 as a season-wide scope, they were about average on defense. But if you narrow that lens down to the second half of the season, after the bye week, they were top 20. Now, what's the deal with that? Why does that matter? Because all of these 5 stars and young guys, these young recruits, they didn't have spring ball last year. They didn't have summer camp. So they were kind of learning on the job in September in games and moving up the depth chart in real time. So once those guys started to break into the starting lineup, it was excellent defense, and all that's back now in 2021. So that's where I'm at with UNC. Now, am I nervous about Lane Stadium Friday night? Of course I am. I was there back in 2008 when Virginia Tech played Nebraska, and if you remember that game, it was a day game, but I kind of got the vibe of it. It was an electric atmosphere, and Dominican Sue had like a ton of tackles and pass breakups and was all over Tyrod Taylor, but Virginia Tech held him out of the end zone and had that crazy miracle at the end to win. So long story short, it's going to be a tough opener, but schedule-wise, if they get over the Virginia Tech hump in the opener, it's a very manageable schedule. No Clemson, and I think they could rattle off a ton of wins.
So essentially, if we don't catch them week 1, they should be able to settle in pretty good with some of those new faces.
Oh, absolutely, because from there, it's Georgia State, UVA, who I'm pretty low on, Georgia Tech, middle of the pack. Duke really poor this year, and then Florida State transition year. I mean, that's a 6-0 start, I think, if they can beat Virginia Tech. Miami will be tough. At Notre Dame will be tough, but not really. When we get to them next on the schedule, I'm selling Notre Dame this year as a program. So, so very manageable. I think they go 11-1, win the Coastal, and then have a win and in scenario against Clemson and Charlotte, and they have the offensive firepower to do it.
Yeah, and Brett mentioned there about them being a meddling defense last year, and they truly were. They were, a 58th total defense, giving up, almost 6 yards per play, and then 65th in points per game, giving up 29. But I see your point, Brett. You doing the analytics, seeing they got better as the season goes on. And I'd have to go back and look at the competition, but I'm going to take your word that you expect to see an uptick in that. So let's roll on.
All right, so Notre Dame, you've got, as you said already, you're selling Notre Dame this year a lot lower than a lot of other folks out there. It looks like Jack Cohn was just named the starter for this team. What are some of the reasons you've got Notre Dame kind of slotted more of a fringe top 25 team compared to like a fringe college football playoff team where we're used to seeing them?
Yeah, so Notre Dame, they have a great track record the last few years and a lot of respect for what they've built there under Brian Kelly. 2 playoff appearances. I don't think many programs out there can match that. So my hats are off to what they've done. I think it's a transition year, though, to be subtle about it. I think it's a transition year. The AP poll has them in the top 10. I've got them 24th nationally. And really what this comes down to is think of what made them strong last year. It was strong quarterback play by Ian Book. He really took care of the ball and did enough to win and was clutch in the fourth quarter, all those intangibles. So it was Ian Book. It was one of the best offensive lines in the country, and it was a defensive front seven that was nasty. Now, fast forward to 2021, all that's gone. Ian Book graduated. 4 of these offensive linemen are gone, and it's All-Americans like Liam Eichenberg, Aaron Banks, a couple other draft picks, Robert Hainsey. I mean, so many guys lost along that offensive line. And then the front seven, speaking to the defense, they lost their coordinator. Clark Lee takes over at his alma mater, Vanderbilt, and they're going through a coordinator change there. So kind of the foundations of what made them special last year are transitioning. So I think that early on in the season, they're primed for an upset victory for Virginia Tech. It's definitely doable. And you mentioned Jack Cohn. Yeah, it's an experienced Power 5 starter, but I think it's going to be tougher than people are picturing to replace Ian Book. He did so much. You don't think of him as a runner or as a dual threat, but in the pocket, very elusive. It's hard to lay a finger on him. He was mobile enough and was decisive enough. So I think they lose a lot with him gone.
I was going to ask, was that one big reason? Cohn's coming from the Wisconsin offense, which is really power run-based play action versus we can remember Ian Book. We go back to 2019, and that last drive, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, that sealed the game for them, there were several times he scrambled. Even though he's not a dual-threat quarterback, he had that element which definitely improved the offense. Now, Brett, you did mention Clark Lee. He did move on to Vanderbilt. And one thing that's changed, Marcus Freeman comes in over from Cincinnati. Freeman's real popular in Virginia Tech. A lot of people, certain people, think that he could be the next head coach here, or they'd like him as the next head coach here. Now, what does he bring to the Irish that could really help them mitigate some of these personnel losses from last year?
Yeah, well, Marcus Freeman, he's a former star linebacker himself from Ohio State, and quickly surging up the coaching ranks. You're right about that. Now, I admit I don't cover the non-AQ team, so I'm familiar with Cincinnati. I don't know the X's and O's on him too well yet. What I do know is what he adds in recruiting has been monumental to Notre Dame already in just a few months. They're bringing in a new caliber of player. They went right into Ohio and stole a 5-star defender from Ohio State. So I think you're bringing a higher tier of recruiting. That's music to ears for Virginia Tech fans. So you have that. And, of course, he was part of great defenses with Luke Fickell there at Cincinnati, the undefeated teams and strong defensive play. So, yeah, he's going to be huge. Now, they have some star power they have to replace with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the All-America winner, and Butkus winner there, gone. But there's still plenty of star power up front. So we'll see. But I think overall it's a transitional year, both defensively at quarterback, offensive line. I think is the biggest issue. There's star power in the backfield, Kyron Williams, and Mini Gronk Jr. they call him, Michael Mayer at tight end. So there's definitely some pieces there. They recruit well, but in general, I don't think this is another playoff caliber team or one of their better teams. It's going to be 2022 for that.
Okay. So you think those essentially because that offensive line turned from their biggest strength to one of the biggest question marks heading into the season, they could get snake bitten by a team here or there. So with that being said, our friend Tally has a question here. Can VT beat this Notre Dame team this year?
I think they're definitely beatable this early on in the season. The key question for this specific matchup is going to be if you guys can establish the run on that front seven. Because you're breaking in a relatively new quarterback, Braxton Burmeister. I think he was 3-1 in starts last year. We'll call him a part-time starter. But really losing your top lineman and Khalil Herbert there. So how quickly can that rushing game reload? Can that dominate this new front seven for Notre Dame? A lot of storylines, but if you're just looking at it program by program, yeah, they're going to be younger, newer, and in the second game of the year, that's definitely going to be a tough. I don't know if it's the second game of the year, actually. I keep saying that, but
it's the fifth, but it's still relatively
mid-October. Yeah.
It's right there before you feel like teams start turning corners.
Yeah, so we'll see.
So,
but,
yeah. Somebody also mentioned on here, I don't know if I think you saw it, Brett. They lose in major bowl games. I'd like to be in major bowl games. I wouldn't care if we lost 63-7. Just getting there back-to-back years is an accomplishment in itself for Notre Dame. And like you said, with Marcus Freeman coming in and now bumping up the recruiting, you're seeing 2022 for them being strong and maybe even further out. So, yeah. All right, let's roll on. One team that I think it's because who the coach is. A lot of Virginia Tech fans cannot stand this Pitt and Pat Narduzzi. Now, we've seen Kenny Pickett for numerous years. A couple times he's tore us up. A couple times he's gotten torn up. So it seems like they come and go with however Kenny Pickett's playing. He's a fifth-year starter. Usually we don't say that. Usually a guy that starts that much is in the NFL by now, but he's not. So is 21 going to be the same or story with Kenny Pickett? They come and go as he is, or do they have more pieces that might help them improve?
Well, college football, it's all about timing. It's all about timing up different roster groups and position groups to really mesh a full offense, and then you got to mesh an offense with a defense. And it's been inconsistent here at Pittsburgh, where in 2016 through 18 they had solid offenses, but nothing on defense. Finally, Narduzzi's defense clicked in 2019, but the offense fell out. So it's very inconsistent. Even within the offense, we'll just focus on that for now. Fifth-year Kenny Pickett, he's got better skill talent around him at receiver and running back than he's had. But then at the same time, the timing again, the offensive line goes through a transition with 4 starters gone, and they're all American caliber. Jimmy Morrissey, the center, is gone. So while you pick up some extra pieces at the skill spots, he's going to have less protection. And he's already went through a couple injuries last year. So, you got to think about his blind side and him in the pocket. He's not the most mobile guy. So while you pick up better skill talent, offensive line is transitioning now. So it's just timing.
So that's the offense. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. I know they returned production from guys like Keyshawn Camp and Kalijah Cansey, but the pieces that they lost were pretty heavy producers on that last year, and then including the opt-out that they had. Will they be able to reload this defense, or will there be some growing pains this season?
Yeah, this was kind of a key to my ACC Coastal prediction, where I'm a little bit lower on Pittsburgh than most. I'm kind of selling this defense right now. They lose, like you had mentioned, 2 All-Americans along that defensive line, Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones, both gone. And that third guy that was also gone was Jalen Twyman. So much star power gone up front, but it doesn't end there. It's also in the backfield, the secondary, that all-conference, all-ACC pair of safeties, Paris Ford and DeMar Hamlin, they're both gone. So it's quite a reload they have to go through this time around. Now, it was great that he finally clicked that defense in 2019. They matched it in 2020, or at least came close in 2020. But I think you're in for a transition. So all that together with the offensive line question, Kenny Pickett, I don't know why the 5th year compared to the 4th or the 3rd or the 2nd would be the year that everything clicks all of a sudden, right? So, that's kind of a hedge there. But, so I have Pittsburgh middle of the pack, 45th nationally, but tied in 4th in the Coastal.
All right. Let's get out of the Pitt territory. They do have to play in Lane Stadium this year, not Heinz Field. Thank goodness for us. That place is a house of horror for the Hokies.
Those yellow seats.
Oh,
yeah, it's the yellow seats.
And really, since I go back to when we were younger, in college and stuff, and we could not win at Heinz Field for some reason. And the tradition continued. Less 2016 when we played fade ball. And Pat Narduzzi lost his mind on the sideline, which is a whole other story and one of those fun things to watch. Now, let's go to me, a team that has been struggling the last couple of years, Syracuse. They bring back a lot of production from last year. That production did not produce a lot of wins or anything last year. And, does another year of seasoning really help this team, or is it just what do you see for them, man? Is any hope there?
Well, now that we're 5 years into the Dino Babers era, it's starting to look that 2018 was the outlier. It's starting to look like that was somewhat of a fluke season. Of course, Syracuse has been a losing program for really about 15, 20 years now. They had a rare 10-win season popped out of nowhere, and it's been back to the usual bottom of the barrel ACC program. And it can really be traced to 2 spots. First, quarterback, that's the easy one. Once Eric Dungy left, there was a transition there. It was Tommy DeVito. He was banged up, and now they have a Mississippi State transfer, Garrett Schrader, in there. A little bit more mobility to the skill set, but still, I think you're learning that the post-Dungy era is a tough offense to come by. But really, besides quarterback, it's really the entire problem of this program is offensive line. It just continues to be a destructive unit to their offense and their entire team. They allowed 38 sacks last year in 11 games. Only Kansas had more. I mean, that's bottom of the barrel nationally. And what that means is it gives no time for intermediate passing or vertical passing. So on passes 10-plus yards down the field, Syracuse completed just 23% of them. So it's just it's an offense that's completely stuck and limited by that offensive line. So, yes, they have starters back, but until that line shows me anything, I mean, you got to keep them last place in the conference.
Yeah, and lucky for the Hokies, we don't get to have to go to the Carrier Dome, which has been notorious getting snake bitten there for the Hokies for whatever reason. It seems like like a lot of teams, they just come out flat for that game. So getting them at home, I think, is gonna be good, going along with some of those other, just overall struggles that they had last year. I think carried over to this year. But let's talk about Dino Babers a little bit more, because this kind of, to me, this kind of has a feeling of a make or break campaign for him. Is that your thinking as well, or do you think he gets another couple years to try to right the ship?
Well, yeah, I think that it might have run its course by now. I think it was an interesting hire, bringing this air raid, pass-heavy concept up to the Northeast. I'm based out of Pennsylvania, and I know anything north of me, they're not throwing the ball around. So to see that kind of Texas-style offense come up here was unique, and it clicked in 2018. It even clicked a couple times before that, and in some of his first years. I think they had Virginia Tech, and they beat Clemson the one year. And he was known for his big locker room, celebrations, and an emotional guy. It was going well, but since that peak, that 10-win season, it's been straight downhill. And last year was just really inexcusable. So now with starters back, if you don't see progress in the win column, or at least offensive line wise, that'd be grounds to maybe move on. Now he's made a couple changes. He went with the unique defense, going with that rare 3-3-5 base defense. So I credit him for, he's creative. He's trying to make things click up in the Northeast, which is kind of a dead zone for college football. So we'll see. But I think you got to get some more wins in the win column to be safe.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, one of the things I think, when we look back on Syracuse, they had a run of a good while there where they were a really quality program, and it's been very hit or miss kind of since the early 2000s. So,
absolutely, they were. I mean, from the mid 80s into the early 2000s, I mean, they won 10 games multiple times. They went to multiple big bowls, and then after McNabb and the miss on Vic, probably one of the biggest things that ever happened to Syracuse was recruiting Michael Vick in '98. It was down to Syracuse and Virginia Tech. Brett, they missed him, and it seems like after that they fell off. But let's move on to further south. Let's look at Georgia Tech. Jeff Collins had a hell of a thing to do when he arrived at Georgia Tech. It's rebuilding a roster from the Paul Johnson, cut your knees out, flex bone option offense. Yeah, I said it. I'm slandering it. Too many guys have gotten injured, whether you like it or not. But they returned Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims, amazing athlete, and had good, consistent recruiting classes. Not great, but good, getting some talents in the door. Is this the season we finally see them maybe take a step up, or are you seeing them kind of meddle?
Yeah, I think you're in for a pretty big step forward in the win column at least. And for what it's worth, you saw a step forward from his first year 19 to second year 2020. Although it didn't show up in the win column. But statistically, analytically, watching them, they were certainly improved in 2020. It's just with a shortened season, no non-conference, the record didn't show it. So I think you're going to get the win boost and more performance boost. It's returning production on both sides of the ball. And that comes from, that's the dividends are paying off finally from playing such a young roster in 2019. The biggest transition, I call it the biggest program transition since Nebraska went away from the option. Back in 2004 when they went from the old I formation option, Frank Solich, to Bill Callahan's NFL West Coast passing offense. So And with that, what they did here, similarly, moving away from Johnson's flex bone option, it's going to take multiple years to recruit positions you never recruited before. Tight ends, they didn't have a single tight end. It was all A-backs and C-backs and B-backs and fullbacks. So, it's a heck of a transition. Now, to his credit, he's done everything right, Jeff Collins. He's really rebranded them as Atlanta's team. He's made them seem cool to the recruits in the area. He loves Atlanta. I had the chance to interview him before the 2020 season, and you could just hear it through the phone, his passion for Georgia Tech. He brought a Waffle House cart to practice. That was a big deal on Twitter. And it wasn't all just smoke and mirrors. He landed a top 25 recruiting class, which is their highest in, I think, 15 years there. So it seems like it's heading in the right direction. This year, you'll get all those dividends paying off. I think they found their quarterback there with Jeff Sims. You mentioned him. Jahmyr Gibbs also in the backfield. He hits the hole really fast and brings that kick return speed. So there's a lot to like. It's veteran finally, and they're now 3 years into this transition. So it's time to collect some wins.
Yeah, and when we look back at 2020, we usually do into the season, we do like a weekly kind of pick against the spread, and Georgia Tech was the one that kept stinging me every week because they'd have a good game. I'd be like, okay, I'm a little bit higher on them. I think they're going to put some consistency in there, and then they'd go out and fall flat the next week. So I think maybe getting some more, little more seasoning there might help them. But, let's talk about their defense a little bit because they did seem to have a propensity to give up some big plays last year. Is there anyone on that roster that looks poised to take a step and help them on that front?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's interesting to think about because in that opener, remember last year they opened up against Florida State. At the time, we thought that this was a legit Florida State team, and you had Georgia Tech holding them to 13 points, playing like crazy. So I thought, wow, what a transition. It looks like this Georgia Tech defense is for real. And then fast forward a week, they give up 700 yards to UCF, and then we start to learn that, hey, Florida State isn't the old Florida State. They're pretty bad. So it was all about first impressions, and they've worn off now. So with that said, though, 9 starters are back. That's good for 20th nationally in returning production on defense. So that's usually a pretty reliable indicator of a year-to-year improvement. He runs a 4-2-5 base scheme, Andrew Thacker, and all 5 defensive backs are back. So you have experience in the secondary. They also added Kenyatta Watson, who was a top 150 recruit there from Texas. He was pushing to start, but it was a crowded Texas secondary. So he's in, adding some almost 5-star talent there. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's transfers coming in. I think they also added an all-conference USA player from Old Dominion. So, yeah, we'll see if it clicks. There is one big vacancy at linebacker, losing tackle machine David Curry. But, although he gobbled up a lot of tackles, maybe didn't have the athleticism to make the all-ACC teams and such. So, look at just overall a ton of production back. And you want to see now that translate into progress on the field and in the numbers. So, first step is there. Let's see if they can execute.
So this is the first big road conference game for Virginia Tech. Is this kind of that trap game, a team that on paper we probably should win, but with some of the things that steps they're taking forward and then playing at home and being the first road test, is that something that could kind of come back and bite us?
Yeah, well, when you look at programs in the ACC Coastal, Georgia Tech might have the biggest variance, the most volatility of outcomes. I mean, if you think of it as a stock, I mean, they could skyrocket with all this experience and all those close losses now converting to wins. If they can take care of the ball, turnovers have been bad. Those things tend to even out. So they could click and become really a top 25 caliber team, or of course they could stay where they are and in that 3-win territory. And it just so happens that the returning experience has a ceiling on it, and they're kind of stuck in the 3-win land. So they could do anything. They're very variable. I have them tied with Pittsburgh there 4th, but I could see them going in any direction, really.
I see Brian writing right there, Brett, make no bets or anything towards Georgia Tech this year with last year. and Brett saying volatility. So, yeah. We're gonna move on to another away game, a Friday night game up at BC. You've already said it, and you've already put it out there. You said Phil Jerkovich is a program changer for BC. Obviously, they haven't had this sort of potential quarterback talent in close to 15 years, last being Matt Ryan. So tell us, why do you think he is the one to lift the BC out of the 6 to 7 win doldrums, as it seems like it's been forever with them between Adazio and Hafley.
Yeah, he really was a program changer. This was a big-time deal, landing him through the transfer portal from Notre Dame. The obvious is that, hey, he's a starting quarterback. He's putting up a ton of yards and breaking records. But more so, it kind of unlocked the transfer portal for Boston College. It made it a destination to other 5-star and 4-star recruits, or I should say transfers. Because after Jerkovic made the move over, 5-star receiver Jalen Gill from Ohio State, 5-star safety Jaden Lars-Woodby from Florida State, they both came to Chestnut Hill. So he kind of was the first domino to fall. And, of course, it helps that he backed it up right away on the field. 4 of those first 5 games were 300-yard passing days. That's a BC record. That's from a school that has a Heisman winner, Doug Flutie, NFLers, Matt Hasselbeck, Matt Ryan. So he made a huge instant impact. But really what makes me excited about Boston College this year is the receiver core. It's their best they've ever had. They have Zay Flowers back. He's all ACC caliber. They get Kobe White back from injury. People forget about him, but he was incredible a couple years ago. He's back, so that's a heck of a 1-2 punch. I just mentioned 5-star Gill there. He's going to be their third option. Might even move up higher than that. So this is the best receiver core they've ever had at a program that has usually just been a power run game. So that, a very veteran offensive line. Everyone's talked about them. So the question becomes, can the defense make enough gains? Can they be strong enough to hold leads against some of these teams? And can BC finally get out of that 7-win range? They definitely have the capability to do it.
So I know last year Boston College seemed to get kind of snake bitten by the athletic quarterback. Are they going to do anything this year to kind of limit explosive plays from that position? And are they trying to do anything like is what they do, is that going to give them kind of create holes in other parts of that defense if they get, say, smaller at the linebacker position?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So one move they already made is that they moved, I already mentioned him, Jaden Lars-Woodby, the 5-star safety from Florida State. They moved him down to linebacker. So getting him into the box, that's kind of trading size for speed there at the middle tier of the defense. Jeff Hafley, I mean, this defense is his area of expertise. He's a defensive coach, defensive coordinator. He was the coordinator on Ohio State's 2019 team that was the best defense in the country. Had Chase Young there as a Heisman candidate. So he's a proven mind. I had the chance of interviewing him too. And just like Jeff Collins, very passionate about Boston College and building this thing up. It's another younger coach, younger head coach. But, yeah, I mean, this is his strength, that side of the ball. So I think that with him there, they should be improving on defense, what you would think. So we'll see if they can defend better against the running quarterbacks. Because, yeah, those guys gave them troubles. Brennan Armstrong last year crushed them. Hendon Hooker, when he was in for Virginia Tech, they couldn't stop him either. So that was definitely the Achilles heel.
So this one back-to-back with the Georgia Tech road trip and then a trip up to Chestnut Hill. What do you think the Hokies are able to pull off 2-0 on that trip?
Yeah, that'd be impressive because while I think you'll be pretty much favored over Georgia Tech, I think the BC game is more of a toss-up to me. In fact, I have them ranked, I think, either right next to each other, 33rd and 34th overall, Virginia Tech and BC. So that's really a coin flip game. So you come out of there 2-0, that's solid. I mean, so yeah, and 2 road trips, no less. And I know they're smaller programs, smaller schools, but given the right occasion, both those stadiums can be rocking. I was actually up at BC when they played Clemson a couple years ago and hosted College Game Day. And although it only seats about 40,000, that place, because BC returned a punt return for a touchdown to take the lead, that place was one of the loudest I've heard. I mean, the roof came off of that place. So in the right environment, in the right setting, it can be intimidating. So we'll see.
Yeah, they don't quite have the numbers there, but they definitely have a great atmosphere, and that can definitely be intimidating for opponents sometimes.
Yeah, great atmosphere when it's when they're packed. I want to ask you a real quick question and do a little hypothetical here. If you put Jerkovic on Notre Dame, how many places higher would you have Notre Dame this year?
Wow, that's excellent. I like it.
Good ball.
Definitely. I mean, obviously higher. I would take him over Jack Cohn instantly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably have them top 15. Now, there's still enough questions that I'd still. It doesn't settle my opinions about their offensive line going through its transition, the coordinator change on defense. So I would still shy away from top 10 for them, but a lot closer than number 24 where I currently have them. So, yeah, that's a great hypothetical.
Yeah.
So probably closer to that, 15 to 12 range that I guess some other folks have him. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, he has some mobility there. He's a really big kid. Yeah. He doesn't go down easy. Kind of reminds me of Roethlisberger in his college days. So yeah, I could definitely see that being a step forward. So let's move on to Duke. Wow, this team is just not returning very much production from last year, and they weren't a very good football team last year either. Was last season kind of an anomaly for the Cutcliffe era, or is this kind of a sign of things to come, you think?
Well, yeah, it's been a steady decline since they won the Coastal Division, and last year was by far the worst. And when you dig into it a bit, there's a couple things. I mean, first, his passing attack, I think, was more cutting edge earlier in the decade or in the middle of the decade, but it's kind of gotten a bit stale and predictable. So schematically, I think they're kind of stuck in the mud. But really, it was turnovers. And I know that every fan base complains about that, and you hear that from everybody. But no, statistically, this was the most turnovers by any FBS team, not just Power 5, but all of FBS, since 2012. So you're talking about worse than a decade turnovers. Yeah, and it was a combination there, turnover margin of offense giving it away like crazy. Their quarterback threw the most picks in the entire country, but then the defense couldn't take the ball away. So, that combo obviously is a bad recipe. So, yeah, it was his worst year ever at Duke, and it looks like they're on the decline as a program, back to their historic mean there as a below-average program.
All right, so it's a similar question to what you asked with Babers, to the historical nature of Duke. I mean, you go back for a 15-year stretch, they averaged 2 wins. They had one winning season from when Spurrier left in 89 up until Cutcliffe's first winning season in the mid-2000s. Is his job safe until he decides to retire? Because Duke has been so bad, and at least he's made them somewhat relevant, pulling off some wins, making a bowl game here and there. Or is it bust? Or is it they say we can't look on the past laurels. We've got to continue to try to at least make a bowl game every year.
Yeah, I kind of get the sense that given their program context and how it's so basketball centric and kind of anything that football is kind of icing on the cake. I hate to think of it that way, but if you try and get into their shoes as a school and an alumni base, that's how I kind of see it. And the way that he brought them to great heights in a crowded conference and a Power 5 conference and won a division, I think that he has a much longer leash than the average coach, and maybe even just can go out on his terms. So I don't think it'll be a dramatic firing or a Black Monday, whatever they call it, on the day after rivalry weekend. So it'll be on his own terms, I think, barring anything like a winless season or a scandal. But he's done so much for them as a program that I think that he gets to call his shots when he heads out.
Yeah, not just delivering wins to a program that isn't used to it, but he's definitely seemed to be a very ambassador of goodwill for the ACC. I think most of the coaches enjoy Cutcliffe, so I think that might play a role as well. And just his history overall, it seems like they want to they probably won't move on unless it gets really bad, like you were talking about there.
Yeah. I mean, everyone from Brian mentions coaches to media members too, they love, like, there's guys who aren't anywhere near the Duke market, but they try to get Cutcliffe on because he's such a good guy to talk to. Now, the one thing I told Brian as we were discussing yesterday, and I'll throw this at you, Cutcliffe is in his mid-60s, so he's probably got 5 to 7 years left of coaching. Do you think it could be one of those things where he maybe wants to leave, maybe go be an offensive coordinator at, a top 15 school where he knows I'm going to get talent, I can create new concepts? Because say what you will, what he did between Tennessee and Ole Miss and Duke offensively, he wanted Ole Miss and Duke. He has an above 500 winning percentages at those two schools. Do you think you could see him sort of, I want to leave because I want to go chase one more national title like I did at Tennessee?
Yeah, it's an interesting hypothetical there. Of course, he made his big start at Tennessee. I don't know. At that age and at that point in your career, you've been a head coach for so long. I wonder if they'd be willing to give up the reins and get more into a coordinator role. I don't know. I don't know how that works. The head coach can sometimes get away with being a CEO type coach in the recruiting world, having the coordinators be the grinders. And so I don't know if you want to get back into that role. It's impossible for me to know. That's a personal thing with him. So I don't know. It's interesting, but I think that this is his last stand, and hopefully make a bowl push and get dunked with Gatorade and ride off into the sunset. But we'll see. You never know.
For Coach Cut, we really hope so. All right, so big one near the end of the season. This rivalry, really 25 years in the making. In the early 90s, it was a brawl between Miami and Virginia Tech. Miami is returning a ton of talent from last season, especially on offense. Is the ceiling for this team really on how well D'Eriq King's ACL holds up 6 months later?
Well, without D'Eriq King, all bets are off. I mean, I don't think they have a chance at anything without him. That's really been the one position group, maybe along with offensive line, but definitely quarterback that has held them back during the Manny Diaz era and some years before that too. So what he brought immediately when he transferred in from Houston was not only stability at quarterback, but highlight plays, like a human highlight reel, passing, throwing, passing and running, dual threat. And people think about his running mostly, but pass completion-wise, he's got the Miami all-time record right now for completion percentage above Bernie Kosar. So he's excellent in both sides of the game. Without him, I don't know where they go. They have a couple guys right now, or were in spring ball battling it out with Tyler Van Dyke and Jake Garcia. But this guy's special, D'Eriq King. So he was probably the biggest one-man addition out there in Power 5, along with their coordinator, Rhett Lashley, who turned around an offense that was really stuck in the mud the last couple of years. Really made them, a powerful offense. His power spread offense that he brought in, it clicked. So a couple issues that might hold them back are at receiver. And I know that returning production-wise, they're all returning starters and have stats. But if you watch them and check out other analytics and drop rates, they were some of the worst drop rates out there. They got to improve on catching the ball and setting up King for success. Now, they do add in Charleston Rambo, who started 2 seasons at Oklahoma. That's a massive transfer portal win. And lastly, though, so the defense has been a strong point for Miami for years, and I think that'll continue, but they are going through a coordinator change with Blake Baker gone, and they also lose a ton of firepower along the defensive line, especially the rush edge and defensive end spots, losing Jalen Phillips, Quincy Roche, and Greg Rousseau, all to the NFL. So that's some firepower gone from the pass rush. So we'll see how all that comes together.
I want to ask you real quick. I know Brian's got something to ask about the defense, but I'm looking at the time frame of D'Eriq King's ACL tear. I'm a 49ers fan, Brett, just so you know. So our tear last year was Nick Bosa tearing his ACL week 2. Nick Bosa just started getting in pads this week. He's almost a year out. He's got to go against Alabama week 1. I mean, from your looking at it analytically, if they know he can't run, how much does it hinder that offense from doing what it can do?
Oh, it's huge. And picture this, too, who they're going against. You give Nick Saban 8 months to prep for D'Eriq King who's in handcuffs and can't run. That's just that's unfair. So
yeah.
And then when you break down Alabama, not to get we're getting like a second effect here, but real quick, their defense first this year, and that pass rush is incredible at Alabama. Their front seven's nasty. So that's a bad formula for Miami.
So let's talk more about the defense then, because you talked about the explosive guys that are gone from that defense, from the pass rush, the edge position. They get most of their secondary back, though. Will they be able to generate enough pressure on the quarterback to actually maximize that experience they have on the back end?
So I think they will. It won't be as incredible as last year. They were one of the best sack teams out there in tackles for loss, but I will say that schematically, that's what they're going for. One of my stats I run is my negative play percentage, and what that means, it just tracks how often a defense is making plays in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage, and it's somewhat stylistic, where some teams will blitz a ton to try and create havoc in the backfield and might get burnt more in long yardage plays in the backside. But long story short, under Manny Diaz, this team is always in the top 10 of my negative play rate. They're an aggressive style defense. It's attacking. And that was before Blake Baker got here as coordinator, and I think it'll continue now that he's gone. It's more a Manny Diaz thing. So they're going to try for it. Now, can they hit home enough? We'll see, because that's 3 legit NFLers gone from that pass rush. But they recruit well here, as you guys know, one of the best in the conference, top 15 nationally. So there's probably guys that are ready to step up. And I think the secondary will hold it down while that pass rush comes of age, because they get a 5-star in from UGA. Tyreek Stevenson comes in. They have Bubba Bolden, who was incredible last year, all-conference caliber safety there, coming in from USC. So, and then, tons of guys, Ivy, Al Bleeds. So, we'll see. But there's a lot to like while that pass rush gets its footing.
So what you're telling me, it might be a little bit of a struggle down there in South Beach when the Hokies take a trip down there.
Only if King's healthy. Without King, all bets are off, like I said. So we're going to learn a lot in week 1 against Alabama.
All right, so we're going to move from one rival to another. UVA closing out the regular season for the Hokies. They played well down the stretch last season, but they did lose convincingly to the Hokies at Lane Stadium to close out their season. Do you have kind of a stock rising or a stock falling grade on this season heading into 2021?
So not only because I'm on a Virginia Tech show, but in all honesty, I have them as a downgrade this year. I had them 6th in the Coastal and 55th out of 65 Power 5 teams. So I don't see them bouncing back towards fighting for a conference or title crown again. Now, to his credit, Brennan Armstrong was great. He filled in for Bryce Perkins, that role, that do-it-all role in Mendenhall's offense, shouldering a ton of carries in the run game, accurate passing. So he was fine. It's just that from there, I don't see many other pieces of what would be a ranked team or a conference contender. Starting the backfield, they really lacked a traditional running game. Usually teams have a feature back or a couple guys, but the running backs don't do much for them there. And then at receiver, they lose a couple key pieces. Du Bois and Joe Reed are gone. And their breakout freshman, the 6'7", Laryl Davis, breakout star, he's injured. So there's, I think, a lack of firepower on offense. And then, you lose a couple stars on defense, too. And really the pass defense has been what's held them back for about a year and a half now. I have the stats all in the book, but you can see a clear decline there midway through 2019. And it's been terrible passing defense since. So it's funny. When you look at Virginia Tech the last 3 years, the Hokies have lost to 3 in-state teams, Liberty, Old Dominion, and UVA. But if you ask some alumni, I wonder which one they're more upset about. It might be that UVA. So I think you'll defend the Commonwealth Cup again for another year, make it, 16 out of 17 or something crazy?
Yeah, that'd be nice to see again. We did not like the Commonwealth Cup leaving Blacksburg in 2019. That one definitely stung, and I don't think we necessarily want to say UVA is our benchmark in terms of whether a season is successful or unsuccessful, but we definitely want to keep that cup at home every year. So we'll see. And the big thing, this is kind of a little bit of an inverse of what we were dealing with Miami. You hit on it a little bit with the secondary being pretty weak for UVA. They also lost 2 of their best pass rushers from last season. Are they going to be able to generate enough pressure on the quarterback to hide what is objectively an awful secondary?
Yeah, I don't think so. That's kind of one of the major factors of me having them so low. I think if you look at some of the other preseason magazines out there, they have UVA higher than 6th, probably in that 4th or 5th or even 3rd range. But I've got them down at 6th because of that star power gone from the linebackers and edge rush positions. And just in general, the secondary, I think it was Bryce Hall. When he went down to injury in 2019, that pass defense really collapsed. And it continued again in 20. And I don't know why it would change all of a sudden in 2021 with those stars in front of them gone. So, yeah. And then when you look at it, I also like to look in between the season, first half, second half. Second half of this season, 2020, they were one of the worst defenses in America. So, and I know that everyone's got context with injuries and all kinds of stuff, weird 2020 stuff, but there's not enough there for me to see a complete overnight change.
Gotcha. I want to say Did you predict the 2019 UVA Coastal win because of the Perkins factor?
I did not. I don't think I had
Okay.
UVA.
Okay. I'm
I
trying
did,
to go
yeah.
into memory banks, but but clearly, their the defense, the back end looks terrible, and obviously, I'm assuming for them to be to that fourth to third range, maybe fifth range, Brennan Armstrong has to put Bryce Perkins numbers up, and that's something you're not seeing. So, which as a Virginia Tech fan, that's good for certain family members of mine. They don't like to hear that. So, hey, I'm just being real, man. All right. Before we get into Virginia Tech, one more question to ask you. What is the one ACC we haven't mentioned here, not on our schedule, not Clemson, but we need to watch out for? Like early season, watch a few of their games because you feel like they have a chance to really do something this year.
So not opponent that knocks out UNC and Miami, and not Clemson. So I think next in line would have to be NC State. This is a team that I have right near the top 25, 26 nationally, second in the ACC Atlantic. And what you have with NC State under Dave Doran, he's produced a lot of NFL players, has been kind of stuck at that 9-win range. But this time around, everything's clicking where you have second-year coordinators. Remember, this time last year, there was no spring ball, no summer camp, and he went with a double coordinator change, bringing in Tim Beck on offense and Tony Gibson on defense with a rare 3-3-5 scheme. So with no install time, they actually still did pretty well. I mean, both coordinators were great. The offense and defense both rose. Now you get the double dividend of all returning production and returning coordinators, a second-year bonus schematically. So I think the sky's the limit for NC State. They can really collect some wins. Every position group looks solid when you break it down. There's not many holes here. So I look for them as a legit top 25 caliber team and, possible for an upset here or there, depending on who they're playing.
Yeah. And now Beck came over from Texas. Gibson came over from West Virginia. And obviously they've got two Virginia Tech coaches in Charlie Wiles and Brian Mitchell at the corner position. But I want to ask you a question because really referring to really their defensive side. They bring all but one starter back. But when a starter is like a Liam McNeil, high NFL draft pick, highly productive player, as you were looking into making your decisions, how much does that go into when it's one guy, but he is essentially all ACC, all American, top draft pick? How does that go into when you analyze this data you have?
Yeah, it's important. I mean, not all returning starters are equal. Not all graduating seniors are the same. But that's one big hole. But 10 starters around them are back, and not just that, but they hit the transfer portal really well. In fact, it was Florida State who they rated. They got a couple starters. These aren't backup guys. These are veterans, starters, and even some all-conference caliber players. Bringing in Corey Durden from their defensive line and Cyrus Fagan in the secondary. So while you have 10 starters back, you add 2 basically starters from Florida State. And more so than that, it's like I said, it's them having their second full year in this scheme, a real offseason, a real spring to learn it. The 3-3-5, it's not your normal, base defense. Like, everyone's 4-3 or 3-4. So going to this one, they needed that extra year of coaching. So it's going to go a long way for them. And, of course, McNeil's a huge loss, but overall, full profile, I like what they have here.
Yeah, and Dave Doran in 2020, I mean, some people thought he was, knocking on, the hot seat there, and then all of it, he has a pretty good campaign, has a really good offseason, and getting some guys in the portal, and now they're essentially gearing up to, potentially make some noise this year. So that's a big switch in just 12 months there for them.
Yeah, for sure. And one last note: their recruiting profile has really improved too. They had some record high classes for their context back in 18 and 19. So those high classes, they're coming of age as starters. So to fill McNeil's void there at nose tackle, it's not just 1, but 3 4-stars are all battling for that nose tackle spot. And then Durden being added. So everything's kind of coming into fruition here. This is his year to really break through in the win column because that's been kind of what's held him back. They've produced a ton of NFLers. But, the win-loss record is nothing to be proud of so far. Against Power 5 teams that finish with 9 wins or more, He's 0-22. So you got to start winning some notable games, and I think that this is the year to do it.
All right, so now that we've touched on every other opponent the Hokies have this year, let's talk about the Hokies themselves a little bit. The big one is on offense. We're looking at the metrics and just the overall production that Khalil Herbert generated last year was pretty ridiculous. And losing a couple pieces on the offensive line. How do you think Virginia Tech goes about replacing that production in 2021?
Yeah, well, it's going to be tough. Because that running game was so dominant, and really the offensive line as a unit in the run game they were road graders or whatever the term is for that. I mean, it was impressive. Christian Darrisaw, he earned All-American honors. It was a first rounder. That it's hard to replace that. And now, of course, Lasita Smith and Tenuta, they return. They're getting high grades themselves, but to lose such a big piece like Darrisaw and the running back there, Herbert, that's really the engine of that offense last year. So definitely question marks there. The other transfer from that cycle, I believe, was Blackshear from Rutgers, but I think that he was moving over to slot receiver. He's a different type of runner than Herbert. So definitely a question mark for me in the run game, and we'll see about that. Passing-wise, it was a battle, Burmeister and Hooker. Of course, Hooker leaves for, I think it was Tennessee. Yep. So it's fully Burmeister's team this year. We didn't see too much of him. I think I said earlier he was 3-1 in his 4 starts. And there wasn't much statistical variance between when Burmeister was in and when Hooker was in. Sometimes when I look into it, I look at which games each quarterback started and played in and try and grade them that way. But they were pretty similar outcomes when either guy was in. So yeah, big question mark here. This will say a lot about Fuente, the way that he can kind of transition from a great rushing attack and see if they can make gains in the passing attack now.
Yeah, absolutely. Raheem Blackshear is a guy that my partner here absolutely threw things at the TV with the way they used him. The video we had from Rutgers and the highlights, it was like, this is a hybrid guy. You have to use him multiple ways. How he used him was incorrect. The coaching staff actually came out, owned it, that they were putting too much on him last year, which we like to hear. So hopefully that changes. Now, I'm going to flip the defense because, as you just said it, how dominant the running game was last year. Let me say you something, and you painted a picture perfectly in the magazine. We were bad statistically on defense, in just about every category. It did show flashes at times, and in certain games, it looked like, well, this looks like a Bud Foster lunch pail, defense. Do you think that breaking in a new defensive coordinator in the COVID era had a big impact on those numbers? And how much improvement do you predict for this defense come the 2021 season?
So first off, when I look at all these 66 programs and 2020 was so weird, all these different side storylines and everything, all this extra context, but Virginia Tech's defense is really the poster child of that. They had it all, unfortunately. It was a coordinator change, and not just any coordinator change, but replacing an all-time coaching legend, Bud Foster, after some 30 years there along the sidelines. So massive transition there with no prep time. Then you had what you thought would be an All-American guy with Caleb Farley. So he opts out. You had the opt-out factor now, and that was new in 2020. So you lose him. Then you lost multiple starters, and the rotation was thin, and there was all these quarantines. I remember early in the season on the broadcast, they were saying like 25 players are out tonight. So just every single storyline 2020 related possible hit this defense. So all to say that I think you're in for a statistical improvement in 2021. It can't get worse because you have a second-year bonus with the coordinator. It's a more normal offseason. You're not going to have opt-outs in August. And now you have some more proven pieces within this scheme. So, it's going to get better. It was just a really fluky season last year, specifically to this defense.
Yeah, we were watching it. There were some moments that just seemed like it looks like they just didn't have enough preparation time, particularly kind of that end moment in the Liberty game after the timeout during the blocked field goal, and not recognizing that, hey, if they get another 8 to 10 yards, they're in makeable field goal range and not a wing and a prayer. And just there were little moments like that throughout the year that they were head scratchers. So hopefully some more of this seasoning, and actually, it sounds like Jay Ham wanted to simplify some of the concepts that he was trying to put in last year. Some of that probably is a little bit of trial and error, and some of it was just, okay, well, I've actually got time to refine what I want to do here and kind of get back to the nuts and bolts of what this defense did well last year. We read Pick Six previews the 2021. You say that there's enough bright spots on the roster to put the Virginia Tech Hokies as the clear-cut number 3 in the Coastal. But you said that there's a gap between us and UNC and Miami, which kind of makes sense based on their roster makeup and things like that. What catalyst, if any, could allow Virginia Tech to capture the Coastal in 2021?
I think a legitimate passing attack would be nice to get going. You want to see that. Want to see a more balanced attack. But really, the defense. I think the defense is the number one concern right now. Just given all that yardage up last year and points, and just think of the old Virginia Tech teams that were competitive, winning 10 games, making Orange Bowls. It was always defense first. And I think I put this in the book too, where if you could have paired the 2020 rushing attack with some of those great Bud Foster defenses, you're talking conference championship. But timing's everything, and it kind of just, it just so happened to align with a weaker defense. But yeah, I agree with what I wrote, that there are bright spots here. So speaking to the defense specifically, guys like Jermaine Waller, I mean, he and Farley were one of the best corner duos in America in 19. And you had Farley opt out, and Waller was banged up. So you get Waller back. Dorian Strong was a bright spot as a true freshman, so that might be your next duo there. You also add in a 2-year SEC starter with Ty Daly at safety, a 2-year starter there transferring in. And then another thing is, some guys were playing a little bit out of position, I think I read. So getting Dax Hollifield to move back inside, more of a natural fit for what he was recruited towards. So little adjustments like that, little tweaks, and then a whole year extra in this new scheme and new coordinator. That might be enough to flip some of these game results, because it was very odd. I've been doing this 10 years to see Virginia Tech not with a winning record and not in a bowl game. I know that's repetitive for you guys to hear. You've probably talked about it for 8 months, but from a national scope, you just always pencil in Virginia Tech for 8 wins. That's just a given every year. So you want to start to get back to that. You want to start to be handling the in-state teams and some of the teams below you in the Coastal. So, building blocks, baby steps first, but you got to get back to the bowl season.
Yeah, this is the first season that Virginia Tech hasn't gotten that kind of courtesy AP top 25 vote. Even if we don't end up making the 25, we weren't in that others receiving vote category. So definitely some of the luster rubbed off last year, and hopefully they can recapture some of the magic we're used to this year.
Absolutely, Brian, and Brett, thank you for everything tonight. But as far as Virginia Tech goes, the one question I have, and you talk about the passing attack, but can they now, since they've settled on Braxton Burmeister, super athletic guy, I don't know if you saw this the other day, had a mile per hour of like 22.8, so obviously speedy. You want to see the passing attack, but obviously with the elements of Burmeister running, is that one of the biggest keys to elevating the passing attack? There's no way they can bring it back to 7.7 yards per carry like Herbert last year. But if they find between Jalen Holston, Keyshawn King, and the variety of running backs and attacks, averaging 6 per carry, is that better ways with a guy who's now been in a system multiple years to actually elevate that attack?
I could see it. And specifically with Justin Fuente here, for years, he couldn't have there was no returning starter at quarterback. It was always a 1-year guy or a half-season guy. So I remember being excited coming into 2019 to have Ryan Willis, what we thought was a second-year starter. And when that didn't pan out, it was Hendon Hooker. And I thought last year, okay, this will be a second-year starter, and that didn't pan out. So I want somebody to go through a full second season and just see the kind of gains that can be made. Now, speaking to his athleticism at quarterback, I wonder if Fuente gets back to some of his old roots, that old quarterback veer that he used to run at TCU on those successful Rose Bowl wins and undefeated seasons when they were still in the Mountain West. So, yeah, you want to use some quarterback run, get him involved if he's that quick, because that brings that'll draw attention from the secondary and pack more guys into the box, aka open up some lanes on the outsides. because that might be a relative strength as you have your top 3 receivers back with Robinson and Turner and obviously James Mitchell over the middle. So, so play to that advantage. We'll see. I mean, I wrote this. I said it. There's a lot to like. There's bright spots everywhere. It's just, with a more normal season, I'm excited to see the gains they make.
Awesome. Well, Brett, we again really appreciate your time here tonight. Well, before we wrap up, Brett, go ahead and give your Twitter account, website where people can go purchase this. And Hokie fans, the Boundary Corner is stomping or on the stump for this. Buy this preview guide. It is well worth the money spent.
Yeah, well, thanks for the praise. Thanks for purchasing. And of course, thanks for having me on. It's been great connecting with so many Virginia Tech fans on Twitter, followers, and other podcast shows. It's a lot of great media down there. So I appreciate the work you guys do. And it's pick6previews.com. And on there, I have a couple sample pages so you can see what we're talking about with the level of detail. The infographics on the left sides, my trends, my data, but then the readable storylines on the right side of the page, and a really deeper dive than you're going to find anywhere else. So sample pages, testimonials are up there. I just got a huge one from ESPN's Chris Fallica, the Bear.
Bear.
That was a great one there.
Yes,
it's up there on pick6previews.com. And then on Twitter, if you're a Twitter follower, it's at pick6previews, all spelled out. And you'll get fresh content every day there.
Awesome. Well, Brett, best of luck this season. Hopefully, definitely this time next year we want to have you back on for another preview. Maybe we catch up with you after the season and we can sort of do some deep diving of, as your statistics and as your models looked, what came to fruition, what was different. So, we'll definitely be connecting with you, hopefully have you back on sometime in the off season.
Yeah, for sure, guys. Anytime, and keep up the great work. We'll be in touch on Twitter.
Appreciate it. Well, that is going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Visit our website at boundarycornervt.com to listen to all of our episodes. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe on our YouTube account and your favorite podcast source, including Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcast. If you are looking to join the Hokie Club and help achieve the Reach for Excellence campaign, please visit boundarycornervt.com/giving to get started. As always, we let our buddy Jason Long from down in the New River Valley play us out. Catch him on Spotify and Apple Music. We thank you for listening. And as always, let's go.
Hokies!